Hello and welcome to Chicanime. My name is Lauren and today I am looking at a Sacred Kingdom Overlord video. This is another one by Annie News. We're still just working our way through this playlist. It's gonna take me a while. There's a lot of videos in it. But I'm looking forward to it. I've been enjoying these, and once again, as I've said a million times, these are helping me not only remember the movie itself, but it's also very, very helpful in the explanations. I really appreciate it. And like, I know I've watched a couple of these before about the Sacred Kingdom, but it is helpful to rewatch it and relearn things that maybe Zeretta Keep It told me about and things that I forgot. But I'm looking forward. So I don't want to waste any more time. Let's watch how Ainz easily manipulated the Holy Kingdom's Paladins.
Out of all the 4 seasons we've seen so far in Overlord, I don't think we've seen Ainz bow his head once. This didn't count since it was Pandora's actor, so for him to do so here and to a commoner of all people, well, that's a scene I believe needs more recognition.
Okay,
It was a much bigger deal than how the movie made it out to be. Now, we're finally at a point where the cut content isn't so much full-on scenes, but what we are missing is the loads of dialogue and development building the most crucial relationships of the Holy Kingdom arc.
It's one of the reasons I like books better a lot of the time.
You can easily see how with every interaction, Neia becomes more infatuated with Ainz. It's some finer context that makes their whole dynamic that much more interesting. So, if you want to see that and what really happened in these encounters here, stick around as we'll go through all of it.
Also, I'm happy that we're getting some respect for Neia in this whole episode. I wasn't expecting that.
Today.
Oh.
Okay. Part 6. The Squire and
that was
the
some
King.
kind of ad that he skipped,
With
and
Neia having just defied Ainz with her request for Momon, Remedios was now giving her the scolding we saw in the anime.
Yeah, fuck.
What we didn't see was Neia's thought process during it. Absolute disdain towards her commander who
Good
did
for
nothing.
her. Good.
You see, sure, Neia wasn't prepared for the situation where her death may not have sufficed to appease the Sorcerer King, but it was even with that she fully believed her actions were better than nothing. Remedios clearly wasn't going to speak up instead, and that was an issue Neia found even more worrisome. Like, everyone knew 3 years was far too long for them. Remedios' inaction may have made it seem like she was fine with it, but to do nothing was the same as condemning all her people to death. That's why Neia believed what she did.
And Neia's like, you have to at least try, you know? Like, you might die, but at least, like, maybe other people won't. Like, bless her. Oh, she's trying so hard. And, like, Remedios, yeah, she just kind of was keeping dead silent. Like, what was going to happen? Like, well, we've traveled all this way for nothing. And people are dying when we're here. Like, you have to at least be brave enough to take that chance, you know?
It was right. There was just too much at stake for her not to say anything. Remedios' fit suggested what she did was wrong, though, leading Neia to question whether results were all that mattered. She started to wonder whether the method was just as important too. Either way, the fact a person who did nothing was the one scolding her, well, that just didn't sit well with Neia. Gustav was far more reasonable, as while he did acknowledge what Neia did was wrong, he also believed her actions were right too. It was for that reason that he suggested they should balance the response between
politically
reward
wrong,
and punishment. Praise equivalent to the amount that they scolded her.
Okay.
His praise on behalf of Remedios was immediately clocked as a lie, since the idea Remedios was happy about anything she did was impossible.
Yeah.
Either way, Remedios needed space, and Gustav made sure to give her that. He would send Neia out so that Remedios could breathe a bit. It's not like Neia had anywhere to go, but with the 1 gold coin she had, she could at least afford a meal somewhere. So, it was while walking the streets that's where she'd encounter Ainz, or at least his voice directing her to an alley a bit more discreet.
Okay,
it was
interesting.
Once there that Ainz would uncloak himself from a veil of invisibility. At first, Neia was a bit frightened by the mysterious voice suddenly projected in her direction, but it was the moment she realized whose it was that she followed it obediently. From here, Ainz's request would be a simple one, the basic action of opening Remedios' window so the two could talk in secret. Of course, Neia's first thought was that this could be an assassination attempt, but if Ainz wanted her dead, she knew he could have just done so when they met each other earlier. There was also the possibility that this was someone who was impersonating the king, but the presence before her was unmistakable. his magnificence wasn't something she knew could be replicated by just anyone.
So it's interesting, like, does Pandora's actor fully replicate that? Because I think he does. I think he can. Because the whole point of the doppelganger is that it's like a perfect reflection and no one could tell the difference. They're a little bit weaker, but that's like it. So I'm just wondering if it was Pandora's actor, would she still be like the presence? Or are her senses just so refined because of her upbringing and because of her innate skills and her father, like, and her ability to sense monsters and such, are they so refined that she actually would never be confused by Pandora's actor?
No. To her, each and every one of his moves could only be performed by someone born as royalty. Still, Neia would consider his request appropriately, then after a short while accept it for what it was. It was before sending Neia off, though, that Ainz would first ask why it was she was out. At first, he thought it was due to some errand, but
it's cause my boss is going to strangle me if I stay, and so her second in command, my other boss, sent me out so that she wouldn't do that.
A confused reaction led him to realize this was free time for her. It was the most precious time Ainz felt the need to apologize for interrupting.
Aw.
Such a reaction was far from what
That's
Neia
really
was
nice.
expecting, startling her due to how out of the ordinary it was.
People, like,
She
being
couldn't
respectful
believe
of
the
her in her
kindness with
time.
which the king was talking to her. It was as if someone had just applied medicine to a place that was in major need of recovery. Now,
Yeah.
it was when Neia
It's
went
like
to
the
open
first
that
time that anyone showed her any personal respect, probably, like, since her dad died. And, like, somebody actually thinking about her as a person. Crazy.
window that, aside from Remedios' natural reaction of anger, the other paladins would reach for their swords out of instinct. That's when Ainz would apologize for frightening them, saying he had no other choice but to meet them this way. Remedios would then kneel along with everyone else, and Ainz would quickly usher them past that. He was clearly trying to get into the conversation as fast as possible,
Let's
a
get
request
focused.
Remedios had no problem accepting herself. She did, however, make an effort to exclude Neia, but the moment Ainz questioned why Neia wasn't going to participate, she quickly changed her mind and ordered her to stay. It was a meeting
She's
Neia
easily
didn't
led,
really
this
want to
woman.
attend herself, but she was curious as to why Ainz had come here. The conversation would then proceed just like how we saw in the movie, up until someone as strong as Momon was mentioned. It was before asking for the maids, though, that Ainz would first predict their true position like some sort of oracle. First, he would mention how the paladins weren't really a resistance at all. He expertly pinned that they were more just like a small group of armed individuals hiding in caves. This led every paladin to gasp, since his assumption was a fact they knew they could no longer hide anymore.
They're
Somehow,
like, you figured us
Ainz
out.
had seen right through them.
It's got that far sight mirror.
Naturally, Gustav and Remedios would stare at Neia, a silent accusation she could only deny with a headshake.
What?
It's then Ainz would go on to deduce more, details very similar to what he mentioned in the cave scene here. He would then talk about the southern forces and how it was unlikely for them to cooperate, citing their deep-rooted issues with the nobles there. It was because of this that Ainz knew they wouldn't be able to offer him privileges, mainly
So does he know this stuff because of his farsight mirror, because of the spying that they'd been doing previously, or because Demiurge is still sending him reports? Because I got the impression that Demiurge has not really been telling him what he's been doing over here. He's just been doing his own thing and letting Ainz do his own thing, and like now they'll meet in the middle, but there's not like a ton of exchange of plans happening. So does he know this because, again, of the farsight mirror, or just because of the previous spying that they'd been doing?
because the new king likely wouldn't follow through on them. Like, even if
Or
Remedios
because if this guy already a doppelganger and he's been sending information?
requested that king to honor her deal, Ainz wasn't so foolish as to think he would. At best, he would just ignore it, and at worst, total war would break out. It was an accurate assumption that many of the paladins could only be shocked at. The way he confidently recited everything as if he memorized it was amazing. Ainz wasn't done there, though, as he would then discuss the possibility of compensation via Robol's national treasures. He suggested the Paladins could
Ooh.
just loot the vault themselves, hand it all over to Ainz, then blame the
Alright.
missing treasure on Yaldabaoth.
Nice.
This, however, put
That-
all the trust for Paladins at risk, something
Yeah.
Ainz knew they probably wouldn't want to gamble with. That being the case, the only choice left was for these Paladins to appeal to Ainz's emotions, a plan which
like,
we know
literally, you
and
can't
he
give me
knows
anything.
led them to here. The room's silence was all but confirmation of that, leaving everyone impressed as Ainz just accurately read their circumstances to a T. Neia, however, came out starstruck, fully engrossed by Ainz's perfection.
So smart.
Compared to all the royalty she'd met before, this was her first time dealing with someone so superior. From his majestic dignity to masterful discernment, perfection was the only word Neia could describe Ainz with. The impression he'd left on her was one she knew she'd never forget.
And also, he was nice to her.
The cherry on top was the way Ainz followed this up, saying how pretty much anyone could have figured it out. He was basically suggesting it was foolish for the Paladins to try and hide their position in the first place.
Because I feel like the Blue Roses also pretty much clocked him too. They just didn't say anything, right? It's like, he's like, guys, I'm not an idiot. The fact you're here at all, the fact that you are here at all, is proof that things are way worse than you are suggesting.
Statement intended to put them in their place. Since he needed to make sure none of them thought of him as some sort of short-sighted idiot, he had gone to imply their circumstances were so obvious that even a toddler could figure it out. It was a clever move that immediately established how the dynamic between Paladins and Ainz was to proceed. He had essentially warned them not to try and pull a fast one on him.
Stop lying to me.
This all took place right before Ainz would ask for the maids, making it a powerful negotiation tactic, placing all the chips on his side of the table.
Yeah, dang.
It was once his request for the maids was made after that a bit of confusion would come from the Paladins.
I do love that though, because he knows they can't give him land or power or titles or anything tangible. And then he's like, he knows they're not going to give him the treasures of the kingdom, but he makes a bid for it. Because this way he's like, well, you can't give me any of these things that you're kind of trying to promise me. You're trying to give me like, an allyship, but y'all are decimated. That's useless to me. That's not helpful. You're not going to give me land or money or anything like that. How about give me some treasures? And he knows they're not going to do that because what he really wants is them to give him the maids, even though they don't know that the maids are already his. But it's a good way to like be able to have extra power that he can then project to the rest of the world and be like, no, I was given this, it's like, from the Holy Kingdom. Oh yeah, they gave me the maid, I like it. It's very smart. It's a good negotiating technique. I feel like we've talked about this before. I don't remember if it's been on this channel or not. But to highball, it's just like, what you really want is this, but to add in some stuff here is what you say you want, even though you know you're not gonna get it. And then you can actually negotiate down to what you want.
Remember, in the novel, no one had witnessed any sort of battle maids yet. This made Gustav question whether they were actually there, leading him to ask what they would do if there were no maids. Well, Ainz, knowing they were gonna show up regardless, simply said they'd cross that bridge when they came to it. Should they somehow not show up though, Ainz promised not to make any more additional demands. That being the case, his only other demand now was for anything not clearly belonging to the Holy Kingdom be handed over to him.
That's fair too.
So, say Demiurge was roaming about with powerful relics, those would go to Ainz instead of the Holy Kingdom. Finally was the request not to hate the maids once they were under him, since Ainz wanted no ill will towards future servants of his. Unlike the movie though, this wasn't a request Remedios could just instantly accept like that. No,
of course not.
Forgiving those who tore apart her country was difficult. Still,
They're
Ainz
under
would request it anyway, suggesting she just needed to work hard in order to convince both herself and the people that things were okay. I mean, it's not like the Holy Kingdom had anything else to offer. They could just blame it all on mind control, then see how that turns out.
See? Compulsion.
Whatever the reason was, that was for Remedios to figure out after her people were saved. For now, she knew she couldn't push back on anything. She was too worried that doing so might make negotiations fall apart. That's when
Really,
Gustav
they
would
should.
request
The worst person to send on a negotiation mission, honestly. Like, I mean, I know that they don't have anybody else, but Remedios is so bad at this.
to discuss these matters alone, taking some time to review his offer in private. Neia fully thought that was a mistake, but Ainz's generosity never ceased to amaze her. What she believed was sure to test his patience was instead met with the same kindness that she received. Luckily, their discussion didn't last long, as in only a few moments they would return stating they would do whatever His Majesty wanted. The next steps were to formalize their contract in writing, something both parties agreed to do later. Now was the time to reveal who it was that was stronger than Momo.
It's me!
Well, after all this deliberation and suspense, Ainz would reveal that that person was him. It was a much more impactful revelation since you were left questioning who for so much longer. The reception to it was exactly as we saw in the movie, except for Gustav, who was pushing back far more than Remedios. He would list out all the issues associated with sending a king as reinforcements, each of which were logically dismantled by Ainz. It was only after Remedios confirmed everything was okay with Ainz himself that she would gladly accept his offer, completely ignoring Gustav. So, all in all...
I mean, Gustav's not wrong either. There are more political reasons to not let a king do any of that stuff, but practically, and in this case, they didn't have much of a choice.
This was a meeting setting the stage for what was to come next. Ainz had manipulated the negotiations in a way that best suited him, and essentially led the Paladins to the outcome that he wanted. Neia's first impressions would be solidified too, paving the path for her cult-like obsession later on.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer that some of that wasn't in the movie, like, or at least it wasn't explained as well. Or I know it can't be, it'd be difficult to. The movie was already so long, but like, I feel like they spent a lot of the show being like, he's kind of an idiot, you know? Like, he Demiurge and Albedo think he's this, like, super brilliant, amazing, smart guy, and he's always 3 steps ahead of them, but really he's just kind of stumbling his way into making things work out, like, literally, like, stumbling his way upward. And it just keeps working out for him over and over again, mostly because he's got some pretty effective subordinates. But then, like, and then a lot of people in the comments are always like, he's such a good strategist. And it's like, well, sometimes I'd see bits and pieces of that. But, like, a lot of the time it still feels like he's just accepts things as, like, people are act terrified, or they, like, ascribe certain motivations or actions to him, and he's just like, totally 100%. And but in this, it's like, no, he actually is incredibly smart. He's a very good negotiator. He knows exactly how to get what he wants, and I just wish we'd seen a little bit more of that.
Now, there was a bit more to Remedios' justification after, mainly regarding the optimal outcome that could happen. It's not like Remedios was aiming for both Yaldabaoth and Ainz to take themselves out, but if they did, she wasn't going to complain.
She wasn't going to be mad about it.
That much we already knew, but what she went on to mention after was the opportunity which came should Ainz be eliminated. You see, there was a chance the undead he commanded be set free to cause havoc, leading to an unholy war that the kingdom, the empire, and the theocracy would all have to deal with. The Holy Kingdom would lend their support as well, but as a country not directly bordered with the Sorcerer Kingdom, it wouldn't be an immediate issue like it was for the other nations. That being the case, the Holy Kingdom could recoup their strength while all other nations were dealing with that. It was a potential outcome in which they actually had a lot to gain. The morally gray area on which it was founded, though, was the core reason why Gustav would question it.
Yeah,
he saw no justice in killing a foreign king than having a war start because of it.
Yeah!
Once again, Remedios would say that wasn't her intention, but she was much less passionate with that statement over her
totally not what I want, for sure, for sure.
It was a disgusting look that left her questioning who Remedios even was anymore. She couldn't believe this was the commander of the Paladins she heard so many stories about, since, as she was now, this was someone completely different. Remedios would even say that they needed to figure out how to milk the Sorcerer King for all he was worth. a line that clearly didn't resonate with anyone.
No,
Everyone
especially because
was
he's giving so much to them right now. Holy shit. Oh, she gets worse and worse every episode, I swear.
visibly disgusted by the way Remedios was ready to treat Ainz. Still,
She doesn't think
Gustav
of him
knew
as
they
like
needed
a
to take advantage of this
sentient
opportunity,
being.
so rather than bring Ainz
he's
straight to the
undead.
capital and have him fight Yaldabaoth right away, he figured they could lighten their load a bit and hit a few cities on the way. Just retaking the capital
Sure.
would leave pockets of demi-humans everywhere, a threat they knew they'd probably need
Yeah,
Ainz
work your
for
way
as
in.
well. That being the case, they couldn't have him leave immediately after he got what he wanted. They needed his strength for the smaller battles too. So, the plan was to gather allies by freeing
Smart.
the soldiers imprisoned in the camps, then save the fight with Yaldabaoth for the end. It was a good idea since Remedios had a person she wanted to save as well. She was looking for anyone who was part of the royal family. Everyone knew the Holy Queen was dead, but with no reports mentioning anything about the rest of the royal family, saving
Everyone
one of
but
them would allow the
Remedios.
Paladins to bring them up as a symbol and, in the process, gain the full support of the southern nobles again. Remember, there's that whole political conflict going on in the background. The issues of the south not helping the north due to their dislike towards the Kalka faction. Finding a member of the royal family would remove any of the hopes the south had of gaining the throne again, forcing them to fall back in line as subordinates.
Okay.
Remedios also had the bright idea of saving whatever northern nobles they could too, since despite them not being fond of the Kalka faction either, by putting them in her debt, she could at least leverage them to gain more assistance.
That's
There
fair.
were plenty of northern nobles who had ties to the south, so that was a connection Remedios wanted to take advantage of. Now, assigning Neia as Ainz's aide was a whole separate issue on its own, since a squire
Remedios just doesn't
serving a
want her
queen was
around.
unthinkable. What he needed was a professional lady-in-waiting, not a low-level squire he could very well perceive as insignificant.
Okay, so it's like, one, it's like another sort of slight against him, but it's also a way to get Neia out of the way.
Gustav was trying to avoid the potential disrespect of it, but Remedios didn't have the patience to work with some third party she wasn't in control of. She also couldn't be that person herself since she was to be fighting in the front lines. That being the case, it kind of made sense why Neia was the perfect choice here.
Okay, if you say
Not
so.
only was she the only available female, she was also the only one either could trust to handle it. Trust might not be the right word in Remedios' case, but that was the least of Neia's worries when it came to a job like this. For now, all she could think of was how impossible this was gonna be.
Poor girl.
So, while despair was the core emotion she was feeling, at the same time she couldn't help but feel somewhat excited. This brings us now to the carriage ride, where Neia's impressions of Ainz would only get better.
I mean, he
At
continues to be
first,
nice!
every move he made had a strong sense of royalty to it, but the longer the ride went on, the more normal Ainz became. What started out as these rare moments of folksiness quickly became more and more frequent until Neia just assumed he was doing so out of consideration for her.
Aww.
It was yet another act of generosity she could only
And
be
not just
grateful
because he can only put up the front for so long.
for. Neia knew it was all just an act on his part though, since she figured it was only because she was a squire. She assumed
Not
if
because
there
he's
was
a dork.
paladin in here instead, then Ainz's demeanor would be a whole lot different. Now, keep in mind the two had been riding together for more than a few days now, so it was only after a multi-day silence that Ainz would finally make conversation.
Okay.
He would straight up ask Neia what her story was. To Neia, this was a very vague topic, so Ainz would clarify with specific things like why she became
Tell
a
me about
squire
yourself?
and what her job entailed. The ensuing conversation dealt more so with the events from this scene here, but in the novel it took place in the carriage ride.
Okay.
So, Ainz would come to the conclusion Neia was a rare type of bowman, mainly because she was an aspiring paladin skilled with ranged weapons. Considering the way the archetype was handled back in Yggdrasil, it makes sense that a bow-wielding paladin would seem rare to him. Neia didn't see it that way herself, but if being an archer was what Neia was good at, Ainz suggested she keep at it.
Yeah.
Like,
makes
with
sense.
so many other paladins
F
already
you,
being
everybody
skilled
else.
with the sword, Ainz truly felt there was no need for another. He would
Yeah, he's like, ranged, and honestly, ranged attacks are so useful. They're so good to have on your side, and the fact that people are like, but if you're not a real paladin, if you don't use a sword, it's like, but what if I'm just better? at the ranged stuff, you know?
They'd also murmur how weird combinations were the path to rare classes,
This is
a
true.
reference to Yggdrasil that Neia would assume was just some type of abstract
Yeah,
metaphor.
she's not gonna have any
It
idea
was
what he's
after
talking
this
about.
that Ainz would apologize to Neia, saying how he felt bad for how she was forced to look after him. Not only that, but he also felt bad for the others since Neia's skills were certainly more useful on the outside. They were the type of words Neia struggled the most with.
Because they're nice and
This
complimentary.
is because Ainz was a king, and it was much easier to interact with him when he treated her like she was lesser than him. For him to constantly treat her as an equal, though, well, navigating that type of conversation was difficult. Neia knew she couldn't let his kindness spoil her like that. It was before she
Bless
could
her.
take a step back from it, though, that Ainz would continue to make it even harder. You see,
and
Ainz
you know he doesn't, like, it's not really connecting with him, the reasons that she's freaked out, right? Like, you know he doesn't get that part. Because even now, he's still that dorky office worker at heart, right? And it's just like, I love that he's like, and Neia knows this, and Neia knows this. It's like, Neia believes this. I don't know that she knows anything. I feel like he's just the guy.
wanted to offer her compensation, but his previous attempt to do so made it clear she wouldn't accept anything. That being the case, Ainz would proceed to offer a gesture instead. Not only would he speak a verbal thank you, he would also bow his head in a display of respect far greater than any gift.
That's so
This
cute.
was probably one of the most inconceivable things a king could do, since Neia was a commoner and he was royalty. With his very country existing through him, it wasn't necessarily untrue to think that a king bowing his head meant that his country was bowing its head too. There were rare occasions where this did in fact happen, but never has it happened to someone of such low standing.
Except for
So
Lord of the Rings.
this was a concept Neia was fully aware of, leading her to think maybe she wasn't just a normal person. Immediately, she would disregard that, then chalk up Ainz's actions to him just being open-minded. Given what she'd seen before, she didn't put it past him to thank regular people like her. She just didn't think it would be to this level. So, it was
It's
after
really cute.
taking a moment to register the surreal sight in front of her
She's
that
like, wait a minute, am I special? No, he's just nice.
Neia would quickly usher Ainz's head upward. She probably should have done so as soon as she could, since if anyone else saw this, there'd be an uproar. She would then pledge her loyalty just like how we saw in the anime, bringing their conversation back to Neia's story. With quite a ways still to go before reaching the Paladins' cave base, Ainz now wanted to know why attaining holy knighthood was her goal. He wanted to know why she didn't want to be a ranger, as well as the reason for which she fought with the Paladins. The explanation was rather simple, and it was mainly due to her mother being a paladin herself. Ainz assumed it was because her mother was a good role model, and he fully believed that she was the one pushing the paladin mindset on her. In actuality, though, Neia's mother was the one always saying not to be a paladin. She wasn't even that good of a parent, barely capable of doing laundry and basic mending.
Aww.
It was her father, Pavel, who always cooked and did most of the house chores, leading Neia to think that
How very Twior coded. Aw, that's really sweet. But like, okay, look. Being good at chores is not the same thing as being a good parent. Like, loving your kid and supporting them and trying to get them on the path that will give them the most success and happiness and just like the unconditional love, that's the important part. So who cares if you're not that great at laundry or cooking? Like, let's give Neia's mom a little bit of a breath because she realized that Neia isn't built to be a paladin. So she's like, but we can focus on your actual skills. I'll still love you if you're not a paladin, you know?
that's how it was in every household. Ainz then made the assumption that Neia's mother was at least good for not stopping her for when she wanted to become a paladin, another incorrect statement on his part.
He's gonna tell me
Reason
why I'm
being
wrong.
that when Neia finally revealed that that's what she wanted to do, her mother immediately brought out a sword and challenged her to a duel. Her
That's really
stance
funny.
was that if she could defeat her, then she would allow it. Of course,
Still
such an
seems
outcome
like
never happened.
It still seems like because she knows that it's not Neia's strong suit, you know? I know nothing about this woman. I know nothing about her. It does seem like she doesn't know how to really interact with Neia, even if she does want what's best for her.
And the only reason Neia was able to become a squire anyway was once again due to her father. He had jumped in order to shield Neia, saving her from the beatdown that was sure to come from this duel.
Oh, so they didn't even do it.
It was during it that Neia had for the first time experienced the intent to kill. I don't think her mother was planning to follow through on it, but I can sort of get why she'd want to shock Neia by having her experience it.
Yeah, that's
especially
fair.
if her goal was to make her not be a paladin.
Mm-hmm.
Ainz
It's
would
not
then
safe.
ask
It's
why Neia
dangerous.
decided to become a paladin anyway, first questioning why she didn't follow her father's footsteps. It was a question Neia didn't really know the answer to herself, but she believed part of it might be because of how she resented him for giving her these sinister-looking eyes of his. Children would often mock her for always looking angry, then whenever she came home to complain to her father about it, her mother would always smack her across the head if she heard her. Of course, now
Okay,
she
Mom.
knew just how much of a gift these eyes were, but it's unfortunate her parents weren't around to see that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you're a kid, and it's like, okay, so I mean, no, actually, I don't have any positives about that, but it's hard when you're a kid and like you've got something genetically, physically, visibly different about you. So like I've got neurofibromatosis, right? Which basically means that I can get these like little bumps and these little like splotches essentially on my everywhere. And so just like the number of questions I got as a kid about some of these like raised like bumpy parts on me, like I for it's a scar now, but like I had, oh, you can't see, like there's a big old scar. It goes like, it's this big, it goes across my whole like arm. That used to just be like a big old bump, like a bumpy bump. And like just like a bunch of these things, people would notice, they would ask, they would be like, what's that, you know, like. Anyway, my point is, I get why Neia would be upset at her father for that particular genetic quirk, even if it did turn out well for her in the end, because there's no positives about NF. There no added bonuses, just bumps. Well, technically tumors, but it's all fine. But that's all we get. But anyway, but her mother should not be smacking her upside the head.
When Ainz
I'll stop
proceeded to
defending
ask
her.
what they were up to now, that Neia would reveal how her father died on the wall with Yaldabaoth and her mother she'd lost contact to during all the battles.
Oh, okay.
She
I thought her mom
assumed
died a
that
long
she
time
had
ago.
died protecting the city. She was, after all, the type to resist to the very end. It was after hearing this that Ainz would bow for a second time,
Oh, yeah, he's like,
flustering
whoops,
Neia yet
sorry.
again. His reason
Killed
was
your parents.
because he found it inconsiderate for delving into such a personal topic, but I imagine his apology might have involved more than that. Since this is told from the perspective of Neia, though, the
true.
only inner thoughts we get are hers. And here in this moment was another round of how impractical it was for a king to bow his head to a commoner. This is when Ainz would pull out the bow, but considering how that segues into the beginning of the counterattack, I think it's best to end things off here.
We'll save it here.
We'll cover that and all the planning in the next video. This was just a lot of cut content building the characters and their relationships. Now, before I go, don't forget to check out the Starforge Systems Freerun collab. Whether it's the PC or the desk mat, I promise the quality is very much worth
cute.
the purchase. So, thanks again to Starforge for sponsoring this video, and you can check them out using the link down in the description.
I like it. Anyway, until next time, ciao. But, like, yeah, okay, so I was definitely doing a little bit of defending of Neia's mama for reasons, like, that I didn't really know, but I feel like he didn't phrase it well at first, you know? He's like, oh, she wasn't a good parent because she couldn't do the laundry. I was like, no, come on. And she's like, yeah, she didn't want her to be a paladin, but it seemed to me like she didn't want that because it's unsafe, and Neia doesn't have like the innate skills for it, and therefore it would be even extra more unsafe. If she's a ranger, at least she's got the physical capability and intrinsic skill for that, and it's safer because it's further away, you'd think. I also definitely thought that Neia's mom died like when she was much younger. I did not realize that her mom died during this whole um conflict. I don't know why I assumed that. Probably because like in the movie her mom is just never mentioned. Um and like her dad is the only one we see, and we see the talk about like how she made her dad like the little necklace, and like that's really the only thing that we really hear about in the movie. So I just assumed that it was like a Disney situation where her mom was dead. But anyway, uh, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.